Alrighty, y'all. Thanks for sticking around. I drove about 8 hours to get here, so I appreciate each and every one of y'all being here today. I came from Alpine, Texas, between the Big Bend and the Permian Basin. But I want to say, to start off, welcome to EarthX 2025 and the Progress Texas panel titled The First 100 Days. So how to advance American environmental policy in 2025. And I'm your moderator, Progress Texas Advocacy Manager, Reagan Stone. First, before we get started, a little bit about us. Progress Texas is a rapid response media organization, and we like to say while campaigns come and go, we're the permanent home for progressive media in action right here in the Lone Star State. So thank you again for EarthX for the invitation and for all of y'all joining us here in Dallas today. We got a wonderful panel today, and I look forward to getting you all to your happy hours later, so please stick around again, and we also will have some time at the end for a little Q&A from the audience. With that, let's get started. So as we near 100 days into the new presidential administration, I'm seeking to find out what are the largest challenges identified by environmental organizations, and how are organizations adapting and fighting back against Trump. You know, this is going to be a wide range panel covering topics from the current federal government overreach to local grassroots power, the importance of young voting blocs, to campaign finance reform. We'll chat about corporations and environmental justice, bipartisanship, greenwashing, frontline and marginalized communities, and everything in between. So it's going to be a tasty one. But let's get to know our panelists first. I'm going to just start the way I wrote it. So Tsion from the Environmental Defense Fund, Tsion Amare, serves as Texas Political Affairs Project Manager, and she leads advocacy, collaboration with lawmakers and stakeholders at the Texas Capitol. And before the EDF, Tsion worked in State Representative Rafael Anchia's office at the Pink Dome. She currently serves on 2 boards that focus on engaging youth and Black and brown voters. And thank you for being here today, Tsion.
Thank you. Good to meet you.
And first question up for you as well. Tell me how you got involved in politics, and more specifically, the environmental movement. And part 2, give us a quick overview of what the Environmental Defense Fund does.
Yeah, absolutely. Pleasure to be here. My background is actually very not environmental. I got my bachelor's and master's in social work, particularly in political social work, and I wanted to serve underserved communities, marginalized communities that were facing a lot of the social injustices that we see today. And I got involved in the environmental space because there was a lot of overlap with the social work population, our clients that we serve, and the environmental injustices that we see, particularly, for instance, here in Houston, or here in Texas, in Houston area, there's a lot of communities that are Black and brown that are disproportionately impacted by climate change. And so I wanted to make sure that my political advocacy background and education is equipping me to advocate for these communities and making sure that we're seeing tangible changes on the ground, on the local, state, and federal level. And so I've been with Environmental Defense Fund for almost 3 years now. Environmental Defense Fund is a global nonprofit that uses science and data and research to bring solution to some of the climate challenges that we see. I manage the political affairs team here in Texas. We do a lot of political advocacy, especially now during session, along with Ian sometimes as well. Lots of fights against anti-renewable bills, protection of water resources, and improving our water infrastructure, improving our grid. So we deal with a lot of issues on grid reliability. So what happened during Winter Storm Uri does not happen again. And also fleet electrification and a wide range of issues in Texas.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here again. And representing Public Citizen, we have Rita Beving. She has a 30-year legacy of advocating for citizens and environmental issues. She's worked with the Sierra Club, Clean Water Fund, and lobbied the state and national capital, and helped shape the city of Dallas's comprehensive environmental and climate action plan. Rita also has an extensive knowledge on fighting pipelines through eminent domain and blocking polluting coal plants. Thank you so much, Rita, for joining us. So, Rita, is there anything I missed in your intro? And more so, can you give me a background on what Public Citizen has been up to in these last months and more of what you've been up to in Austin?
Well, thank you. Public Citizen is a group founded in 1971 by Ralph Nader. We're over 50 years old. We only have an office in D.C. and in Austin, and I'm the North Texas satellite. We work on consumer protection, campaign finance reform, getting big pharma to reduce medical, prescriptions and make those pricings fair. The D.C. office does some environmental work. The Austin office primarily does environmental and energy work. And I just came back from the Capitol yesterday, and I heard the renewable panel, one of the worst bills of session that would kill the future of renewables, SB 819 rather, is passed the Senate, going through the House. We're real concerned about it. And there's some other bills of concern. There's a lot of bills on giving blank checks to the advanced nuclear industry, and there's actually a really bad bill going through committee that would kill the climate plans and the pollution emission reduction plans in Texas.
And we're going to talk more about each of those as we have time. But I'm going to move on to a volunteer with the Sunrise Movement. Rohan Bansal is a yoga enthusiast and has took part in a 10-day silent retreat. How can anybody do that? Goodness. But he also calls himself an environmental activist. Rohan has a mathematics and computer science degree from UCLA, and he's currently starting his own business, Look Out Venture Capitalists. But as a volunteer hub coordinator, he organizes and engages the youth locally right here in Dallas, hoping to affect change globally. We're excited to hear your perspectives, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Rohan, when I think Sunrise Movement, I think, Occupy Wall Street or sit-ins, things like that, social justice, right? Can you tell me a bit more about what you do as a hub coordinator? And part two, do you have any mentors you look up to that perhaps lead your actions in this movement?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. And first of all, I just want to say that I'm really grateful to be here, to be amongst you all. I've heard so many great things, and it's just like I have deep reverence to be here. So, it's an interesting question. What do I do, right? I run an activist organization, right? The question is, what is an activist? I believe that an activist is someone who speaks truth to power, especially when the power isn't, the people in power aren't hearing the truth of the people, And, Sunrise is a small organization. It's a nonprofit organization, Sunrise Dallas specifically, right? Sunrise National is quite large, and we have many branches, right? But, my primary aim is to organize people and point them in the direction that they need to go to make their voice heard, right? I'm not just a person who advocates for issues. I'm a person who teaches people how to advocate for their issues. That's what I do. That's what my organization does. Yes, that might mean protests. That might mean boycotts. That might mean sit-ins, right? Something to make our voices heard. But that also means giving public comment. That means talking to local politicians. We do everything on a very, very local level. And most fundamentally, we try to reach out to the youth who feel helpless these days and give them a sense of hope and give them a sense of direction. That these are the actions that you can take. What we do is not so different from any lobbyist organization, right? It's just that our instruments are different. My mentors. The people who I look up to the most are Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. I know this is I work in an environmental nonprofit. It's also a social justice organization, right? But I believe that apart from, their leadership skills, their oratory skills, their conviction, their philosophy. What set Martin Luther King Jr. and Mahatma Gandhi apart were two things. Number one, their ability to ask for the right things, right? To try to enshrine things in the rule of law. You know, Mahatma Gandhi asked for the British to leave India, to leave the British rule of law, right? And Martin Luther King Jr. asked for equality amongst all people to be enshrined in the rule of law. I believe that as an environmental advocacy group, it's very, very important that we have clarity on what we're asking for on a local level, on a state level, and on a federal level. Only then does it make sense to have our voices heard. And that's what I aim to do in Sunrise. And the second one is strategy. You know, these people were very smart in the way that they used the power of the people tactfully, right? They hurt, you know, the Britishers or, you know, whoever, the US government at the time, where it hurt, right? And I believe that's what all environmental activist organizations need to do, you know? Thank you.
Yeah, so it's not just about voting, and we're going to get into that too. But first, via Environment Texas, y'all probably know him well. Ian Seamans serves as City Hall advocate and works to secure clean energy, water, and air, as well as well-funded parks and a livable climate across North Texas. Ian's led campaigns to include environmental reforms in the City of Dallas's comprehensive plan, protect public transportation funding, and streamline rooftop solar permitting. He's a Texas master naturalist and sits on the board of the League of Women Voters of Texas. Thanks for being here today, Ian, and thanks for inviting me to be here as well. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Ian, I'd like to hear about what Environment Texas has been up to, but also, you know, you've been here all week at EarthX. Can you start with just telling me, you know, what you've learned, what's been of interest?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, not to be cliche, but I think that my favorite thing about EarthX is really getting a lot of people from very different stakeholder groups all at the same conference in the same place for a whole week and just seeing what happens. So having the opportunity to have conversations with people that are outside of your bubble, I think that is really important for you know, shaping how you, you know, move about the world, but especially how you do advocacy, especially here in Texas, where we do have a very diverse number of stakeholder groups, to be sure. Environment Texas started in 2007. We're part of Environment America. Environment Texas is a transpartisan advocacy and education organization, like you said, working for clean air, clean water, as well as parks and wildlife and a livable climate for all Texans. We really try to differentiate ourselves from that point of view of bringing everybody to the table and moving forward there. We think that it's really critical, especially to win the hearts and minds of people and to move together on these issues that are very important to us, like the environment, like climate.
Well, thank you again, Ian, for being here, and thank you to all of our panelists. Before we really get into how the sausage is made, I want to lead us in with some light here first. So in 30 seconds, really quickly, what's a recent win that you within your organization are proud of? Ian, start us off.
Oh, I mean, this is easy for us. I'll give you two quick ones. So in 2023, Environment Texas won $1 billion for Texas state parks. Yeah, that's the largest investment for state parks ever in the state of Texas. We are really excited about that. We passed with supermajorities in the House and the Senate and got 76% of Texans voters to agree on something, which is funding our state parks. And then, really quickly, in December, we also won a settlement against ExxonMobil. So the final appeal went through, and we won the largest ever settlement under the Clean Air Act against ExxonMobil for violations at their Baytown facility.
Fantastic. Zion, anything you want to lift us up here at the beginning?
Sure. I'll start with it's currently ongoing, but in the Texas legislature, we are working on a groundwater infrastructure bill that is moving through session, which we're very proud of. And Environmental Defense Fund also played a very key role in the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act on the federal level. And so seeing the billions of dollars of investments that communities are receiving is very, very good. And we also have a strong legal defense team right now that's playing a large role in making sure that these investments are protected, and we're blocking any rollback attempts that the administration is making. So very proud of our work on the federal, local, and statewide level, and we have a lot of initiatives such as the Moms Clean Air that are doing the important work of protecting children and communities from the harms of climate change. So very proud of our work.
Woo, fantastic. And Rohan, I'll be honest, this question started with you at lunch because you were just talking about all the cool things that Sunrise has been up to. Tell us about one or two real quick.
Yeah, so most recently, I don't know if you guys have driven around Dallas, but there are a lot of parking lots here. And it's intentional because, there are minimum requirements about the amount of cars that like commercial enterprises need to be able to support, right? But this reduces the amount of area that exists for housing, specifically affordable housing, or just housing in general. So one of the initiatives that Sunrise had was to reduce the minimum amount of cars that commercial enterprise would need to support, right? So we successfully did that this year, which is a pretty good thing. So hopefully more affordable and green housing coming into Dallas. Another win that we had just last year was free DART. So Dallas Area Rapid Transport is free for all kids under 18 years old. That was one with, I can't just say just by us, but there's another organization called Data in Dallas, which also does great work. So yeah, those are things that we were a part of and helped achieve.
Fantastic. And Rita?
Well, I will say that Public Citizen has thrown 12 lawsuits against the Trump administration in the first 100 days. And yes, we've had some wins there. And also, we were instrumental in getting the CCAP passed in Dallas, and I've been around it ever since we got it passed. I'm now a technical advisor on the Environmental Commission, and I think in the last 2 weeks, we killed a bad bill that would have affected renewable energy. A lot of our time at the Capitol is killing bad bills because it's tough to get the good ones through. Thanks.
That's exactly right. I love hearing about how, especially advocacy folks, can kill or modify bills without taking a stance on them. That's something I'm really interested in. But let's get into more of the jazz here. So 94 days today of the Trump administration so far. We've left the climate accord in Paris, had a barrage of executive actions, orders on coal, orders on LNG export permits, cutting EPA staff. I mean, the list goes on and on. But due to the large number of executive actions that have taken place over the past few months, it's been difficult for me, let alone the public, to keep up with this. So question for everybody, and we'll go one by one, but what is one issue that you think deserves more attention or causes you the most concern about making progress on your work? So Zion, you were telling me about the bipartisan infrastructure projects that are being held up. Am I right about that? And, can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I mentioned, Environmental Defense Fund played a key role in the passage of Inflation Reduction Act. And there is billions of dollars worth of investments from tax incentives that communities are going to be seeing trickling down in their area. And so one of our key roles this year is protecting those tax incentives. We believe that at the end of the day, a lot of community members care about clean air, clean water, and healthy communities and a healthy future, no matter who's in the White House, no matter which administration it is. And so we're uplifting this messaging of clean energy equals more jobs in your communities, and cleaner air in your communities, and also lower energy bills. And so we're uplifting this messaging and making sure that we're protecting rollbacks. During Trump's first administration, he tried to roll back over 120 environmental protections that were put in place, and over 80% of them were blocked in court. And so we're continuing that work this year of making sure that we have a strong legal team, we have a strong team on the grounds talking to community members, we have a strong team on the state advocacy level to protect these investments that were made during the Biden administration, and ensure that America is a competitive place for the energy market.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, Rita, yesterday we were talking a little bit about how you feel like everything's going backwards, especially around the state capitol. I felt like that for a long time. But, one concern I think we both share is definitely money in politics, but also that big money, and you were noting how it's connected to this nuclear power comeback. Can you expand on that a little bit for me?
Well, it's disconcerting about some of the money that you have these groups pop up before the legislature starts. Stewards of Conservancy, or the Coalition for Critical Infrastructure. And they're basically front groups, okay? And for instance, there is a big push for advanced nuclear reactors, which frankly, the technology is pretty unproven, and it can take you 17 years to even get the thing off the ground if it's not completely abandoned first by the project manager. There is a group well known to all of us. It's called the American Legislative Exchange Council, or ALEC. Last year, they passed advanced nuclear bills to help fund advanced nuclear in 25 states. We have a local group down in Austin called the Texas Public Policy Foundation. They are backed by ALEC, and they are very much behind a bill that just got passed in one house regarding basically giving a blank check to get advanced nuclear going forward. And it's not a loan, guys. It's a grant. They don't have to pay it back. If they go belly up, they're not going to have to pay back the state. And we tried to get that changed. Unfortunately, it's going forward. But in the meantime, there are two bills going through both chambers on expediting uranium permits. Oh, shock, because it's related to nuclear, right? So they want to expedite nuclear permits where they do not have to go through the type of permitting they have in the past. So we're going to have an explosion of uranium mining in this state if these all get to the governor's desk.
Nearly $1 billion, I think, is what that just payout is.
Exactly.
Yeah, so Ian, I don't have a lineup here, but what's concerning you most?
Ooh, I would say I'll try to highlight something that is, definitely not talked about as much. I was reminded in the previous panel there is also the loan office, Office of Loan Programs, and those loans are extremely important to our infrastructure here in the United States. And under the IRA, that specific office was given a substantial amount of money so that they could invest across the United States in new power facilities, clean, renewable power. That office's loans being in jeopardy now is very concerning to us. I think that something a little bit wider that I think has wider consequences that Tsion touched on is the regulatory rollbacks as well. So that is a problem across the board with environmental issues. I would say I'm going to highlight two quick things. The Endangered Species Act, redefining harm in the Endangered Species Act so that now habitat is not included in that. That has, could be terrible implications for us because obviously if you don't have habitat, you can't live somewhere. If there was no habitat for humans in Dallas, there wouldn't be many of us. And the same goes for any other type of animal. Another one related to regulatory rollbacks, my last one will be specifically over clean air. So how many in the room know that there was supposed to be a change regarding particulate matter here in the state of Texas, whether or not we are actually meeting the law whenever it comes to air quality of particulate matter? So maybe 1, 2, including the panelists. So a few years ago, every few years, the Environmental Protection Agency updates our pollution standards to the best science of what is actually the level of this that has significant harmful implications for human health. Just a few years ago, that was updated for particulate matter, which are tiny particles in our air. You can think of them as soot. That's the typical name for them. This is the most dangerous kind of air pollution for humans with the highest mortality rate. That standard was updated, and under that updated standard, pretty much every single major Texas city would be in non-attainment status for particulate matter. That was supposed to go into effect in this last year, and what we saw is that the governor and TCEQ held that up, and that is still in limbo today. So we are not officially yet in non-attainment, not because we do not actually meet the standard, we do not, but because just simply the paperwork has not made its way through the system. And I am very troubled by the fact that the Environmental Protection Agency, that the federal government is not holding Texas accountable in the way that it should be, because this is one of the most meaningful things for all of us in this room. Is the air that we breathe clean and safe?
Well, thank you. And, lots of concerns. One more, though, I think that's really important, Rohan. What y'all are doing to ensure that people that are working with Sunrise know their rights so that, you can protect your people, whether they're protesting or they're being activists in any way. Especially, in this time right now where protesters are being called a name that I don't even want to use right now. They're being called environmental terrorists in some way. Rohan, what are y'all doing to prepare for, this new age right now?
So, thank you for the question. So, Trump's policies, or intended policies, basically, we're anticipating two issues, right? One issue is that Sunrise loses its nonprofit status, right? This is because it's an activist organization, right? It's an organization which is active and actively dissenting against what the administration is saying, right? Our goals and the administration's goals are not aligned, right? And we've seen Trump threaten other organizations with the same thing, right? There's Sunrise Dallas, which I'm a representative of, and then there's Sunrise National, which is a larger organization. If such a thing happens, then Sunrise National, which has the resources to fight such a legal battle with the federal government, will do so, right? On the local level, all we can do in Sunrise Dallas is, once again, be activists, raise our voices, and make sure that we're heard. And we have to do this in a way such that the people who are protesting with us are safe, like you mentioned, right? This means that we have to know our rights and we have to educate the people in our community about their rights, right? So that they can come out. One of the key aspects of this administration is governing through fear, right? And, I mentioned Gandhi earlier, right? One of Gandhi's philosophies was that, the Indian people actually gave power to the British through concession, right? If we do not continue to speak, if we say that our dissension is unsafe, right, we are playing into what they want. And that is effectively what I believe that my role as an activist is, to say that yes, there is fear. There is a level of risk with what we're doing, right? But ultimately, we do have to make our voices heard. And, there are different types of protests, different types of boycotts and sit-ins. Some are more confrontational, some are less confrontational, right? Last thing I want to say is this, that one thing that we're very concerned about, I'm personally very concerned about, is that protest, the ability of someone to come out and speak their mind against the views of the current administration, any administration, on the local level, state level, federal level, has not ever been outside of the political system. It has always been a part of the political system, right? It always has been a part of the political system. It is a very, very dangerous precedent to set that this should not be a part of our political system, which is what I believe the current administration aims to do. So I hope that answers the question.
It absolutely does, and thank you for your work. So we've heard some wins, y'all. Don't forget that. We've also heard a lot of concerns, and now let's move on to some strategies during this odd time that we're in. Of course, Rita, you said that y'all are going to keep legal battles on Trump no matter what. Of course, is there anything that's changed, since maybe we talked yesterday, but besides the sheer number of lawsuits brought in only a short few months?
Well, here's the thing, right? Of those lawsuits, we've won some injunctions, but of course the administration is appealing those. The one that we just threw about a week ago was one where all the climate tools and all the EJ screening, where one can go and look at a certain area and look at the demographics, what the cancer risk is of those areas, et cetera. The administration started taking those down about as soon as he walked in the door. And so we sued along with other organizations to get those tools back up because they're very, very good informational tools. At the moment, I can't tell you where that's at, but, we are going to keep throwing lawsuits, and if they escalate up, we will go ahead and do that. We work with Democracy Forward, the ACLU, so we work in coalition with other groups to get that done. And just like we fight down at the Capitol to kill the bad bills.
Absolutely. Well, Ian, I'm going to work over to you here, and in lining this up, of course, I want to know about, some strategies as we find ourselves in these times, but I know also that you deal with a lot of local projects and plans. Do you see work getting hyper-local right now? And, does that galvanize change at the state capitol and beyond?
Ooh, good question. So yes, whenever there is a tougher time in one venue, that is a great time to move to a different venue. What we're seeing is, as we specifically at the federal level talk about things that, I hope that we can all agree on, like clean air, like clean water, like keeping the clean tax credits. While we, keep up that, we do spend more time at the state and local level where we can get more things done. As a municipal kind of regional advocate here in the North Texas area, I think that there is really a lot of merit to working at the local level. Not everything is national. 80% of Americans live in urbanized areas, and yet how many advocates are in those areas, how many organizations are working with those communities versus how many are just in Washington. I'll say that Washington probably outnumbers the locals by at least 10 to 1. I would love to see this be a time where we do focus on those communities that, are maybe even just not aware of some of the actions that they can take for their residents in regards to having a clean and healthy environment for them. I will say, however, working at the local and state level is made much easier by things like the clean energy tax credits, things that can superpower the work down at the local and state level. Much of what we saw with the IRA was money and tax incentives that were funneled down specifically so that communities could make the decisions about what makes the most sense for them. Those communities, I hope, will continue to have that funding, and I think that that will be one of the biggest advantages of having that be a local decision at the local level, is that for those people getting those, tax incentives, getting those grants, that is not a nationalized issue. That is something that is directly affecting them in their homes, in their communities. And so whenever someone says, hey, I think that we should take that away from you, I hope that we can come together and say, hey, that shouldn't be partisan. That affects all of us that live here.
That's right. And, I will note a quick partisan summarized quote here from the newly elected Texas Democratic Party Chairman Kendall Scudder. Something to think about is, we look at Houston or San Antonio, Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, these major metropolitan areas that are nearly million people cities, if not more. And he says, in any other state, these towns and cities like Lubbock or Amarillo or San Angelo or the Rio Grande Valley with 100,000, 200,000 people, they would be major media markets for these issues that we're talking about. And so that's something to think that we have a lot of room to expand in those regions too. Are you trying to jump in here a little bit more?
Yeah, so I'll just add to that just a touch. I think that a big part of this is cultural and kind of feeling the empowerment that you can make change in your community. What I've noticed as a Dallas City Hall advocate is that in the city of Dallas, we have great people like Rohan, like Rita, like Tsion. We have all of these people that are, feel empowered to make change, feel empowered to, go into their community, to go to these municipal meetings, to go and advocate for them. But what we don't see is in any of the suburbs, in any of those cities that are seen as secondary here in Texas, like Amarillo, like Lubbock, these are not podunk towns. These are towns like the town that I live in, Plano, Texas. More than 250,000 people. That's the same population, I like to remind people, as the city of St. Louis. And yet, I don't think we have the same kind of advocacy community as a city like St. Louis. So I think that one takeaway is, you might see a lot at the federal level right now that is very overwhelming. But look around you and go ahead and, pick up your plowshares. It's a great place to get to work here in Texas.
Very good, very good. And, moving on to Rohan, we, talked a little bit about strategies, solving, the problem of getting the youth involved in every, this literally would be a political consultant's dream. How do I get the youth to vote, to be politically engaged, right? If we look at 2020, the presidential election, there was a huge increase. 22% or more of our under 25 age bracket and millennials came out to vote. And then in 2024, that actually just evaporated, went away. I think, we can all say that there's something around maybe a peace movement in Gaza that could be a reason. But I know environmental issues is a huge part. So why are the youth so important to the movement or politics in general? And how do you get them involved? How do we turn them out to be voters?
Well, like you mentioned, in 2020, more people, I think more youth got out to vote than in 2024. In 2024, I'm sure there were not really candidates that you wanted to vote for in the first place. Like, the youth might have felt that way. I can't speak for all the youth, but, I can speak to the challenges that Sunrise faces with the youth. One thing I want to say is that there's really no problem with the willingness and desire of youth to get out and make change, right? That we have in spades, right? Young people don't want to just sit on their phones or sit on their laptops and watch the world burn. We want to see something happen, right? The question is, how do we do that? The systems which create climate change, like which create greenhouse gas emissions, are so big, right? The way I like to put it is that we have created a way of living dependent on greenhouse gas emissions, pretty much, right? How do we change that, right? And that's why I think many young people feel helpless. I think that's where Sunrise comes in. And I think that's where we can give clarity, we can give direction, we can give them a sense of hope that, hey, these are the solid actions that you can take which will move the needle, right? They will not do everything, but they will move the needle. I really, really believe this, that, you know, decarbonization, the goal that I think everyone here is for and wants, right, is not possible without the next generation, without this generation, without the broad support of like all entities involved, all stakeholders in our economic system, right? The youth are the coming generation who are going to be the major stakeholders in the economic system.
Yeah, and so it sounds to me, you know, like the late and great Ann Richards might have said, and I got her socks on right now, y'all can't see, but she said, we got to make the table bigger, right? And so that sounds to me like the youth need a seat, or rather, we need to invite them in, everybody that has different views on this.
I think that, you know, it's an interesting way to phrase it, that we need to invite them in, right? The truth is that no one's inviting us in, right? We need to take our seat. We need to pull up a chair and put it at a very cramped table already, right? I think that's the situation that we're sort of in right now. And just briefly, I want to say that another challenge that we sometimes face with the youth is, or just like in our organization as a whole, is siloing, right? Of like, you know, environmental issues, right? This organization is dedicated to this organization is dedicated to this. When, you know, what we as Sunrise are trying to do at this point is trying to build a large coalition for action, right? Like I mentioned earlier, right? I don't believe that, you know, any of our carbon, you know, like whatever our goals are possible without the work of Rita, without the work of Tsion, without the work of Ian. We need to work together for this to be possible. Like every single person in this hall, you know, this Congress of Conferences needs to be involved in this. So, yeah.
Thank you, Rohan. So Zion, we're back over to you. You know, the Environmental Defense Fund is known, of course, to be bipartisan, and it works with interest groups from the grassroots, local orgs to multinational corporations. First, I'm asking, like, how does everybody get on the same page? Is there going to be any, you know, movement with that in 2025, or any new strategies y'all are discussing or messages to play around with this year?
Yeah, I'll start with the last question and move up. And Rita touched on this too. This administration has closed down the Environmental Justice Office that's been open for 30 years to protect overburdened communities from the impacts of climate change. They've also taken down environmental justice tools that were used to map out where these injustices are found. So one of the strategies where we've implemented to counter this is by implementing our own tools. So for instance, we have the Climate Vulnerability Index tool. If you search CVI, you'll find it. And it uses census tract data and over 180 tract data to map out your vulnerability based on health, based on your location, your age, your race, and a bunch of other factors. So we've implemented that tool to serve community members, but also it can be a data that lawmakers use to influence their policies. Another tool that just came out is the petrochemical map. And again, maps out where petrochemical pollution is coming from, who's responsible for that pollution. So facilities, it maps out the facilities involved in this pollution, and who's impacted by it, who's responsible for it. And again, this is a tool that, especially now during this administration, at a time where a lot of these tools are being taken away, we're putting this to the table and making sure that communities have access to this, lawmakers have access to this, and other nonprofit organizations have access to this. We have an Inflation Reduction Act tracker that shows what what the tax incentives are, how much money that those incentives have brought, and also which ones are being shut down or being frozen. And so again, one strategy we're using is just implementing our own tools. And then messaging is a huge one. How do we connect what's happening federally and this message we're seeing federally to the lives of community members that are directly experiencing the impact of climate change and pollution? And so the messaging that we have is clean air, is investments in clean air, or I'm sorry, investments in clean energy are bringing more jobs into communities. They are having clean air, making sure that we have healthy communities. And it's also lowering energy bills. So regardless of who is in office, regardless of the administration, we're fighting for clean air, clean water, a healthy future, and just uplifting that messaging. And then what you said about how do we bring all stakeholders together?
Yeah.
I think Environmental Defense Fund is known for our science, and we're a global leader on science and data and research. And so we have areas of expertise, and we join with other stakeholders that are working on those issues. Now, are we going to agree on everything with Environment Texas or Public Citizen or other nonprofits? Most likely not. But with the places that we do agree on, again, putting communities, putting people at the center of it, how do we make sure we're banding together to use our resources? We can bring the science and data and research. Another organization will bring their expertise and fight, again, for a healthier future and for a healthier community. So we collaborate where we can, and we don't focus on agreeing on everything, but on just places that we do.
100%. And information is power, and people first. I'm already on board. Yeah. So one more circle of questions. We're running out of time here, but I want to make sure I do leave time for a couple questions. So we'll answer these as quick as we can, but do them justice as well. Ian, I want my heartstrings pulled, and I want to know what these frontline communities are. Who are they? If you can't give me an exact story, can you tell me about the people that you're lifting up at City Hall?
Yeah, definitely. So at City Hall, we are always talking, with the residents in the room, hopefully. So that is part of what we do, is watchdogging City Hall. Of a lot of community members do not have the time to check the meeting agenda and check the minutes from the last meeting and then trace back through the minutes of meeting after meeting to 2 years ago whenever this topic was first talked about. A big part of what I do is looking through all of that information and being the eyes and ears so that we can highlight things as they come up. Another big part of my work is working with all of the great partners that are already located in Dallas. Obviously, we already have a good many niches filled in our ecosystem here. The role that I try to play is bringing our skills to the table for the community and saying, hey, what can we do? Where do we fit into this? We do not want to duplicate the work that is already being done. One great example of that is with Texas Conservation Alliance as well as Audubon, Texas. They have been providing this great service called Lights Out Texas, part of this national campaign over the last few years, where they advocate for large buildings turning out those lights that are facing the sky so that during migration season, they don't blind birds and have them hundreds run into buildings. This was caused by this program came about because of a building off of Galveston that had hundreds of birds run into it all at once, one huge flock, and all die because of these lights. They've expanded that program over the years. They've gotten all of this great data from doing surveys, and they have found out that, hey, the convention center in Dallas is the most deadly building in the city for birds, with 30% of all bird deaths in downtown Dallas alone caused by this one building. Audubon, Texas has some great advocates, not in Dallas, unfortunately. Texas Conservation Alliance, a 501c3, is much more comfortable in the data and education space. They reach out to us and say, hey, you are the one at City Hall. You are the one that, can talk to these people. How do we get this done? So we are working with a multi-billion-dollar renovation of the Dallas Convention Center, getting bird-friendly glass design and lighting for that convention center with council support.
Fantastic. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And If we haven't already been doing swivel head in here, we're going to do that real quick again. Rita, when I was a kid in the 90s, I remember on broadcast TV, similar to Good Morning America, there was a segment about clean energy, and they would show some windmills and then pose reasons why natural gas was so darn clean. This was on Good Morning America segments. Come to learn, this project was funded by an oil and gas company. How is that even possible? Lying to me as a kid, of course, and I'm heartbroken. And is that still happening today?
Well, I remember, because I was on the board of Sierra Club locally and on the state, years ago when we were saying natural gas was a bridge fuel, okay? Now, so there is greenwashing in that respect today. Unfortunately, our state environmental agency, the TCEQ, when it comes to applying for grants for cleaner vehicles, you can get a grant for a CNG vehicle. And there's also all this talk about hydrogen. A lot of people don't know. A lot of times when they pump hydrogen in pipelines, it's mixed with methane, right? Which the oil and gas industry loves. And just like the other day on nuclear, oh, there's no waste. We can totally reuse the rods. There is nothing to worry about with nuclear. And so that, you know what? It's easy to listen to a sales job, but go find the data behind it. So it just continues in a different way today.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank all of our panelists up here today. We got a couple of minutes for our Q&A session, but I want to remind everyone, Progress Texas, we're working hard to connect communities of diverse Gen X, Millennial, and Gen Z Texans and give a voice to a growing majority of people with the ultimate goal of leading a more representative democracy. We don't do any subscriptions or paywalls, and you'll be able to see this on our website in just a week or so. So I ask y'all and encourage y'all to go to progresstexas.org and feel free to support us there as well in all of that work. And please give a warm round of applause for all of our panelists today.
Guys, I want to thank you. I kind of had this idea, a week ago?
Yep.
2 weeks ago. I've really been having issues with my mental issues, waking up every morning to what is happening, I almost don't want to turn the news on anymore. So that was the idea I had, and I want to thank you so much. I called a few people, I called him, and he made all of this happen. So I want everybody to have a round of applause.
Thank you, Ian.
We've got a couple minutes left, but I think there's a couple questions I'd like to ask you because it's something that bothers me. And my brother once told me, he goes, anything that upsets you, I can bring you back to money in politics. So can anybody and I know I've got some stats here, 76% of Americans, 76.6% of Americans support our constitutional amendment to end the dominance of money in politics. Would anybody like to comment on a case study or experience they have where money in politics has upset you?
Can it be anything?
Anything. Environmental.
Well, it's related. I'm a city council member in this small town of Alpine, and so we have to keep issues related to what the topics are on the agenda, and I love expanding that. But so there's this thing that they're starting up right here in Dallas called the Texas Securities Exchange. Any big funders right now? It's like a private stock market, right? And it is going through the Texas House and Senate right now to make to where there can't be any tax on that private stock market. We're talking billion-dollar funds literally moving from somebody's bank account to the next. In New York, they've taxed 0.5%, and that makes tons of money for New York, roads, water infrastructure, environmental issues. It's also related to this environmental social governance type stuff. If you bring the money to Texas, then they can keep investing that BlackRock money, that Fidelity money, all those big Wall Street banks right in Texas and keep doing it with oil and gas. So right now that's going through the Texas House and the Texas Senate to literally give tax breaks to billionaires. It grinds my gears. It makes me mad as hell, and I don't want to take it anymore. I've reached out to my state senator, and he's actually one of the sponsors of it. Senator Blanco, fantastic gentleman, met him multiple times. We agree on a lot of things. And I'm learning my first time of how to deal with giving someone criticism, but at the same time also still wanting to work and have a relationship with them. So I hope that helped with answering that question.
Yes, it does, and I want to thank you. Did you have something to say?
I'll add one that's related to
Yes,
the environment.
please.
Well, Winter Storm Uri happened in 2021, and over 200 Texans passed away because of the direct inactions of our lawmakers to weatherize our grid and make our grid more reliable. And so in recent sessions, grid reliability has been a huge topic to make sure that we are spending the money, spending the efforts to make our grid reliable and make sure that what happened during Winter Storm Uri does not happen again, and we do not stay in the dark, and people are not freezing to death literally because of the inactions of our lawmaker. And so talk about money in politics, literally killing people, and we saw the direct impacts of that. And to this day, people's energy bills have been skyrocketing following Winter Storm Uri. And so everyday Texans are experiencing the direct impacts of money and politics over people.
And Zion, I'm going to bounce off you. You were talking about Winter Storm Uri, and Kelsey Warren is a big name. He's not sitting in here as far as I can see right now. But Kelsey Warren, that Texas Securities Exchange, that private stock market, he already owns a third of it, and they're trying to give him a tax break.
Well, I think I've been here all week. I've been a curator most every day, and I think this has been one of my favorite conferences. And we put this together in a week. What do you think we could do in the next year? I'd love to work with all you guys and see what we can do. Maybe start it a week before, something else. One thing that I'd like to do is I'd like to, if we're trying to reach out to younger people, I'd like to reach out to people where they could also afford to attend. And I'd like to look at some kind of space where we could do something the week before. We got EarthX here. Why not Earth XYZ? The week before, where we're catering to a younger, and get sponsors where people can come for free and talk and work and plan. And so that would be the best. My birthday's next month, and I'd love, the best present I could have is if you guys could work with me to come back and make a real difference next year. Okay?
I would be happy to, because I've been at EarthX since Trammell first took it over. And it was free to the public. And I think we need more access to this event. But I also think there are some environmental justice frontline communities right here in Dallas that some of us never see and never hear from. And I could, West Dallas, Joppy, the Lane Planing situation in Dallas, the GAF shingle plants. There's concrete batch plants surrounding folks. There's ethylene oxide plants that people don't even know what they do. And we have the second largest frack county in the nation in Arlington. And those kind of issues and those kind of frontline communities need to be here in panels.
Yeah, to that point, North Texas Day, first day, Monday, one of my favorite days, not just because I'm the North Texas person, but I swear. And then also Wednesday, I will highlight for anybody that's going to be here next year, make sure to show up on Monday for the North Texas Day and Wednesday for the Dallas Climate Symposium. Both of those free to the public. The word is not out about them enough, so everybody should show up to those, and we would love to see really participation from across the community in those settings.
And Steve, I just want to just echo, at least I think everyone wants to say thank you a lot for
Yes.
allowing us to be able to bring these issues to the conference as
Thank
well.
you.
very
Thank you for
much.
coming. And in closing, we spoke about Trammell Crow, and we spoke about coming together. He wrote a book with Bill Shireman called In This Together. It's a great book. It's available here. I'm sure it could be signed somehow. But it's about, we're never going to get the far right and the far left to get along. But the center, 70%, we all want clean air. We all want a better planet. We all want trees. We all like babies. Who doesn't like dolphins? Does anybody doesn't like? Everybody loves dolphins. So I think if we need to figure out a way to just reach across, not do this yes or no, but yes and, and really start working together and find our common ground. Not what we don't agree with, but what we do agree with.
I'll always take advice from Second City Comedy Club. Yes, and.
Yes, and. Oh, yeah, yes, exactly. Oh, man, you're older than you think, or you look. Oh, again, I'd like a round of applause for these guys. Thank you so much.